Hi, everyone. Welcome to Speech Communication in Business and the Professions. My name is Professor Carson, and this video is just going to be a quick introduction to the course and give you some basic information to get started. So, what are we talking about in this course? Well, what we're doing is we're taking the concept of communication, which is the study of how people interact with each other, how people exchange information and create meaning or relationships with one another, and we're applying that to business, which is when we try to produce, buy, or sell goods or services in exchange for money and in the hopes of eventually creating a profit. And the big question that we're asking in this course is how can we use communication to achieve our business objectives and business goals? Some specific areas we'll talk about are interpersonal communication, presentations, group communications. We'll go into some practical things like interviewing and negotiations, and really just explore the topic of communication and see how we can apply it to successful business practices. Now, I want to quickly go over how to navigate the course to make sure that you know how to get started. So this is our Canvas course, and everything that we do in the course will be housed on Canvas. If you go to the left here, there are a couple of tabs that are useful for navigating all of the information that's on our course. First is the syllabus. So if you go to the syllabus, you click this link, you'll find all of the information about the course, what my expectations are, what my policies are, how to get in contact with me if you need help, how the course is structured, and how the course is graded, all sorts of information that's very important to know before we get started. The next tab is teaching policies. These are more general policies that are from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, but there are some important things here, such as the specifics on the academic integrity policy, things like accommodations, if that's something that you need to apply for, things like medical supervision. This is for if you end up having some sort of medical event that makes it so that you need an extension on an assignment. This is the policy for how to request that. And so if any of this is useful to you, you might want to look more into it and see what resources the university has to offer for that. We also have assignments. This is a tab that you can go to if you want to see all of your assignments in one place, both the due dates for the assignments and the points, both the points you can earn totally and the points that you earned on completed assignments. Speaking of points, you can go here for grades just to view all of your grades in one place, both for individual assignments and for your overall grade. If you go to library resources, if you're doing research for a paper, this is a good space to start by, you can click on the libraries to see what resources they have. You can make appointments with the libraries to get some help planning a research paper or just getting help with a literature review. And there are also some databases here that are specific to our field in communications, as well as another research guide that can be helpful for someone who might be new to studying communication and researching topics within our field. But the main place you're going to be doing a lot of things is the modules tab. All of the assignments and readings and information for this course is organized into 5 modules, one for each week, since we have a 5-week course. And if you look through here, you'll see everything that you're required to do and read and look at in order to be successful in this course. Now, most of the course is going to be divided into lectures and readings, quizzes and worksheets, and assignments that you'll submit. The first is pretty self-explanatory. If you click on one of these links for lectures and readings, it'll take you to a Google Doc that you can look through and see the links to any readings from the textbook that we'll be looking at, any links to my YouTube videos that are going to be where our lectures are stored, and then sometimes there's optional links that you can go to as well in case you want a little bit more information about one of the topics that we covered. The textbook is pretty easy to navigate. If you click on one of the links, it takes you directly to the chapter that you'll be looking at. If you want to go to a different chapter, you can click at the top and find a different chapter. And sometimes it won't be the whole chapter that we'll be reading. Sometimes you'll have to scroll down to a specific section, but those instructions will always be in the instructions for the reading. Next, my lecture videos are all going to be on YouTube. Part of the reason is that this just makes it really accessible for a lot of people. There are a lot of really cool features. You can show closed captions and even move them around the screen based on where you want the captions to be. Another cool feature that some people that I've shown this to have been surprised by, but YouTube actually has a transcript function that lets you see the entire video's transcript in one place rather than only being on the closed captions. So if you want to scroll through and read it instead of listening to the video, or even if you want to search something in the transcript, you can type in a word there and then scroll through and see every time that word is used in the video. You can click on that, it'll take you directly to that timestamp, and you can watch the video from exactly where you are, exactly where I'm talking about the topic that you want to hear about. So this is going to be where all of our lectures are stored, and those links are also going to be in the assignment description as well. Next, we'll talk about the quizzes and worksheets, and all of these quizzes are open book. You're able to use the textbook, refer to my lectures, there's no time limits on them, except for the due date, and some of them are formed more like quizzes, where it's more of like a reading check to make sure that you've read the assigned readings, and then sometimes we'll have you apply the concepts from those readings into a specific scenario. And then other times we'll have things that are more like worksheets, where you have a guided questionnaire that walks you through some questions that'll help you develop some skills that in a specific area that we're talking about. And then lastly, we have assignments. And here's one assignment that we have here. All of the assignments are pretty detailed in terms of what you need to do for the assignment, what the prompt for the assignment is, the requirements for meeting all of the things you need to do for the assignment, but then also how to style the paper and what the paper length needs to be, what type of file the assignment needs to be. So with these assignments, just make sure you read all of the instructions in order to get the most points. And for a lot of these assignments, not all of them, I'll put an example of how you either can organize the assignment, or in this case, how you're required to organize the assignment. So make sure you read this as well, because that'll really help you get a good starting point for where to start writing about your assignment, and also give you a good expectation for what I want when you finish the assignment and submit it as a final product. And then lastly, talking about getting the most points, all of the assignments that are submitted assignments have rubrics attached to them. It tells you exactly what I'm looking for. This is just a title up here, but then if you view the longer description, it'll give you more specifics of what would get the highest score for each of these criteria. And so one thing I recommend is that before you start the assignment, take a look at this so that you know how to get the most points. And then even after you've complete the assignment and right before you submit, if you have some extra time, take a look at this, maybe double check your work and make sure it meets all of these requirements. And if you aren't happy with your work, you have a little bit of time to change things and add a few things in order to try to get the most points. So assignments, all of the information is here. It takes a little patience to read through all of it, but if you want the most points, read the whole thing. Now lastly, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the whole course, what we're going to be talking about over these 5 weeks, and what assignments we'll be doing throughout the course. We're going to start with some basic concepts about business communication. Communication theories are kind of the main ideas of communication and some of the more fundamental thoughts that a lot of researchers have had about communication. Interpersonal communication will go more specifically into how two people communicate with each other, and will also explain what other areas of communication exist outside of interpersonal communication. And then we'll also talk about what sources we would use for business communication and how to tell if a source is reliable and useful in studying business communication. As far as assignments goes, you have a quick syllabus quiz that'll ask you questions to make sure you understand the syllabus, with a quick survey question at the very end to ask what you're hoping to get out of the course. We'll have a quick reading quiz about communication theories, a worksheet to practice interpersonal communication, and then there is an extra credit option here. The requirements for this course is that you either took public speaking or debate as a previous class that you took. So this will just review some of the concepts that you would have learned in those classes, and you're able to take extra credit points from that, but only from one of these assignments. So if you've taken both classes, choose the one you're strongest in. If you only took one of these classes, then I recommend just picking that one. And, being able to review some of that stuff can help you get some extra points, while also making sure that you remember a lot of the important stuff that we'll actually use and talk about in this course. Now, week 2, we'll start by talking about conflict mediation, and that's how we try to resolve conflict both from the perspective of someone who's currently in a conflict with another person and from the perspective of someone who might mediate a conflict between two other people who are having a conflict. We're also going to talk about persuasion, which is an area of communication that focuses on how we try to convince people to do something, to adopt an attitude or belief that we want them to adopt. And then lastly, we'll talk about leadership, which is about influencing and motivating people to help achieve a goal that our team is trying to achieve. With that, there are some quizzes and assignments that will review the topics that are from these readings. We also have a paper in which you'll have a scenario to respond to where you have some problematic employees that are not doing what management wants them to do, and you'll have to figure out some solutions in order to use communication, maybe leadership, maybe persuasion, maybe even interpersonal communication, to try to fix some of those issues. And then lastly, there is an extra credit opportunity that starts in week 2 and ends in week 4. So basically, because this course doesn't focus specifically on written communication, I made this an extra thing. But if you'd like me to review your resume, you can submit it here. During week 3, I'll give you feedback on it and some corrections to make. And then in week 4, you can submit those corrections and get extra credit points for that. Now, week 3, there are 2 lectures that I'm still working on finishing, so that'll be done by the end of week 1 probably. But the 3 topics we'll talk about in week 3 are the hiring process, and then we'll look more specifically into interviews as part of the hiring process, and then we'll look at negotiation. And with all 3 of those topics, we're looking at how communication can help you succeed in those 3 areas. We'll do a worksheet in which you'll practice some of the skills we talked about for interviews and how to actually prepare for interviews and the different questions you might encounter. We'll have a quiz on negotiation and some of the concepts from negotiation. And then we have a discussion board that kind of puts you in the driver's seat of a hiring committee where you have to decide who the best person to hire is. And through that, we'll practice some negotiation concepts and some communication concepts as you discuss with your classmates and with your peers who the best person would be to hire. Week 4, we'll talk about meetings and how to lead a meeting. We'll talk about presentations and important skills for giving a presentation, but more specifically in a business context. And then we'll end on ethics and etiquette when it comes to communication in business. Some assignments we'll do. The elevator speech is a speech that you'll record as a video and then submit. You'll create a meeting agenda item as if you are going to present this agenda item at a meeting for 30 minutes and try to lead a discussion with other people through that meeting agenda item. We'll have part 2 of the hiring discussion board where you'll reply to your peers. And then there is an extra credit component to that as well that if you want to learn more about that, click here. And then lastly, that part 2 of the resume review I talked about earlier is going to be due at the end of week 4. Now, week 5 is the very end, and I'm, again, still working on this lecture. It should be done by the end of week 1, but this is all about communication planning. And the idea is that now that we have this big toolbox of communication tools that we know how to use and we know the effect of using these tools, we can then look at a goal and create some objectives for what we want to do, and then look at how we can use communication to achieve those objectives and achieve those goals. And so this lecture will take you through a step-by-step process to create a communication plan where you can achieve goals using communication. And then this final paper, you'll create your own plan and describe each of those steps and how you've used it to create a plan. So that should be enough to get you started. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to me over email. My email's in the syllabus. And if you want to stop by my office hours, definitely feel free to do that as well. But I'm here to help. Hopefully this course is going to be a good experience for you to learn about communications and learn how you can apply it to business settings and business goals. And by the end of this course, hopefully you've gained a couple new skills that you can use in your future careers.